So today for part 4 of pushing through, I would like to talk to you about pivot. So when I think of pivot, the first thing I think about is like basketball. Yeah, I played basketball in high school or whatever. And pivoting is like you keeping one foot still while the other foot can turn around and go whatever direction it needs to go into to be able to pass the ball. The problem is when your pivot foot moves, you are considered walking or traveling. Boom, they blow the whistle. You can't do that, okay? So when I think about in life in general and us having to pivot, it doesn't always feel good. I think of just life situations in my life. For me, I'm 48, had to start a new job after 9 years in November of something that is completely out of my career. It's not my degree, related to my degree or anything like that. And it was honestly a bit intimidating on first. It was very slow paced. So I'm thankful for that. Somewhat still kind of slow paced for me because I'm still kind of new and it's so much information. But I've learned to love the job. I've been trained for the job. I'm doing well in the job, and I'm enjoying it. But I think about like life in general. We have relationships with each other. God never intended any of us to be on this earth without somebody. He created family. He loves family, And when I think about just different relationships we go through in life in general, you think about having to pivot from those relationships. It's not always easy. Me having to pivot from one career to another one wasn't easy, but with God, all things are possible. Amen. So I think about relationships. Those are not always easy. I've lost a few friends along the way, went through divorce a few times or whatever. And having to pivot from each of those relationships cost me some very deep pain. But the reality is when I look back, I'm like, it makes so much sense now. But one of the things I can honestly say that when we pivot and God is calling us, I guess I would say, to pivot in a certain direction, we might not always be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel or understand how it's going to work out for our good. But it does work out. When we look back, it's kind of like, okay, now that makes sense. So maybe God is calling you to pivot in a certain area of your life and you're just unsure. You know what? If God is showing you, then you have to roll with it. Because sometimes even in relationships, I was having a conversation with a friend a few weeks ago, and we was just saying it's weird how God will cause people to hurt you so bad sometimes that it forces you to let go. So when God is trying to pivot you into a different direction and you are fighting against God, it makes it so much harder on ourselves, because then he have to make them hurt us so deeply that we don't want nothing to do with them. And then we got to go and pray, God, help me to forgive them. But if we would pivot when he tell us to pivot, we would save ourselves a heartache. Pivoting may not always be easy. It may not be comfortable, but it's necessary. And because God is calling us to pivot certain relationships or decisions in our lives to go in different directions, it shouldn't be always about us, but it should be, Lord, let your will be done. Because if his will is being done, that dark gravel road that you're seeing right now won't always look so dark later. So my question to you today would be, is God calling you to pivot in certain areas of your life and you're struggling? That's a food for thought, because if you're struggling in the direction that God is bringing you to, it's time to let it go. Amen. Amen. So I leave you with this. Proverbs chapter 19 and verse 21. And it says, there are many devices in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the counsel of the Lord, that shall stand. So before I go, I just want to remind you, if you haven't already, check out my website at www.talkswithshay.org. You can subscribe to my videos on YouTube and find me on Facebook. Like my page, share my page, invite your friends to like my page. And until next time with Talks with Shay, Shay is out. Y'all stay blessed.